shake up a soda can and leave it on the counter. It's time for Uncle Says. Welcome to another week of Uncle Says, a weekly podcast discussion of what it's like to make short videos and YouTubing from China. We're coming to you live to tape in beautiful whoopwu studios in Luzhou, Sichuan, China. It's a dark and somewhat damp evening here in the studio and outside. And I'm Emily, and with me as always is Peter.
Whoopwu!
This week you can even see him. He's not just in the background.
Whoopwu!
Our discussion today is going to be about what happens when you disagree with your collaborator, or when you and your collaborator do not see eye to eye. And we will also
get on with it.
We will also readdress last week's confused discussion of what's an idea versus what's style. But first, we're going to kick things off with a How's Your Uncle? So, Peter, I've been dying all week to tell you that I've been doing this, but my life is so exciting that I wanted to save it for the podcast. I stopped looking at screens in bed Monday night. And immediately the next day, I felt so much more well rested. And
what kind of screens do you look at in bed?
Like on my iPad, I read on the iPad, and then
Gotcha.
Sometimes I play a little game. And it's not that I wouldn't fall asleep, but I saw an article in Bustle that
in bed while you were what?
Yeah, that. It's not that it interferes with your ability to sleep at all, but that your sleep is not as deep and that you're not getting REM sleep. And I have been feeling super tired all the time. And by 4 o'clock every day, I'm like, ugh, I got more hours and hours to go before I can go to bed. And then this week, I don't wake up feeling tired. I don't start dragging in the afternoon, and I'm able to stay up until actual bedtime, which is a revelation. And it's annoying that it is everybody's don't look at screens in bed, and they're so right. It wasn't even I had to get used to it. It was the next day. I felt so much more well rested. It was amazing.
Did it affect your dreams?
Maybe. I've had a lot of weird dreams. I can't remember any right now, but I think the meditation affects my ability to remember dreams.
Interesting.
And maybe even, I don't lucid dream. You lucid dream sometimes, right?
I think so.
I don't lucid dream, but I think I am sometimes now aware that dreams are dreams. It's very weird. I'm playing with my mind.
I left. You were talking about 𝗖𝗵ście and what's his name last week?
Oh yeah, 𝗖𝗵come.
I left them the other night, and I dreamed that I worked in an office with them. We were all designers. We were working on a newspaper. They were kind of irritating.
That's funny. I don't really dream about anyone in particular. Sometimes I'm not even in my own dreams, which I don't know what that says about me, but that's the truth.
You wouldn't cast yourself in your own movie?
No, I would write a part for somebody else.
And so who would you cast as you?
These days I don't know. I remember in high school my go-to answer was Meg Ryan, because she was America's cutie pie sweetheart at the time. And I was a cutie pie sweetheart.
Not bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out.
Don't go looking at anybody else.
Casting! Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say. But yeah, so that was I know it's not super exciting to reveal live on the podcast, but it was I was astounded at how much of a difference it made, and I'm really excited about it. It still is it's such a habit that even every night before I go to bed, I have to be like, okay, no screens in bed. You know that it works so well. Only paper books from now on. And so I have to buy. Oh, well, I have to buy more books. I love buying books, so that's not a real problem. And then the other thing is not a surprise to you. We had the cleaning people come by yesterday.
Was not surprised.
And it's so satisfying. We have house cleaners come by once a month to give everything a good scrub down.
This was a particular interesting week because the month before,
yeah,
we had an insufficient cleaner.
Yeah, I didn't. I myself did not call and complain, but I had my assistant at school call and say, he didn't do a good enough job. Don't ever send that guy back to us. Yeah. But yesterday, the woman who came was so thorough, so good.
She even cleaned the bottom of my shoes.
Yeah, she wiped down our slippers so we wouldn't track old slipper dirt around. So if you're in Luzhou, we have some cleaners we can recommend, and one guy that we don't recommend. But yeah, so that's your uncle. Let's go on to conducting business. In the business world of YouTube this week, we're going to talk a little bit more again about thumbnails, because Peter made some significant changes to our thumbnail strategy. So the big idea about a thumbnail is this is your album cover, this is the marketing, this is your branding, this is the image that people see and decide if they want to look at you further or not. So as everyone says, they're really important. And there are some basic rules that people abide by based in marketing and human psychology. The big one being your thumbnail should have a person on it, and it should be a pleasant face kind of looking you in the eyes in an engaging way. Which is, that's not any kind of mind-blowing anything. That's the basic criteria. And so we had been doing that and still trying to put our quirky spin on it. But you can see in a thumbnail for... What did we end up calling I'll Never Be Chinese?
Wait, which one's for that? I'll Never Be Chinese.
Or what? China Keeps Welcoming You.
Oh, yeah. That's one.
Yeah. What's the name of that one?
It is, even if you're a vlogger, China welcomes you over and over.
Yeah, so that's our take on it. So it is my face, and then it has a kind of comic book white outline to make it pop off the page. And
that one's actually a cartoon of your face.
Okay, so yeah, that's a cartoon of my face. And I'm making actually not just a welcoming smile, but a somewhat aggressive face. But what Peter kind of, maybe you can say better about the transition you went to this week.
Well, if we're going through basically what you do for magazines, like People magazine or something, you put your star's face on the cover, and that, that's something you can identify with. Keep the eyes open so you can see into somebody's eyes and soul. And of course that works. The problem is that there's little art to it. So essentially every week you end up with the same, I'm looking here at our weeks past, and it's just your face, your face, your face, your face.
And then especially now with the giraffe, it's my face with the giraffe costume on. So it's even more, and that's again, good branding. It's an image repetition, so that if you see this in a giraffe costume, oh, I know what that is. But if you look at them all in a row, it's somewhat repetitive.
Right, because if you are People magazine, you have a different person on the cover every week. But if it's a magazine about you every week, it's just the same picture over and over again.
Yeah. And so with this week's thumbnail is just a pair of boots. It's an episode about I'm talking about shoes. And so Peter went with a really striking image of my red boots with a yellow background as a nod to the colors of China, but also because it just like pops strikingly off the page in somewhat of a more pop art feel, which, as you explained to me, the rationale is like, we're not marketing the giraffe. The giraffe is a character, but it's not a personality. So we're not like, I'm not trying to go for some morning host talk show gig. We're not trying to say like, connect with the giraffe. We actually have a whole aesthetic we're trying to promote. And so if we can take these shots and make them a little more artistic, maybe a little more, not abstract, because boots aren't necessarily abstract, but it is an abstracted image from the story rather than like, hi, it's me again.
Well, and if we can tell the story with an illustration along with our SEO, our written description, hopefully we can come up with something that's a little more enticing and a little more us. If most of what you're trying to sell is maybe here's how we do a thing, here's how we live in China. It's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to sell an aesthetic sense of something more artistic, of something that grabs your attention immediately. And if it's just your same face over and over again, who's going to know? It's different if you're trying to teach somebody a certain skill, how to cook a cake or something. Every week is a different cake, and I can put your face in a cake, and you can identify with that. But every week it's something different, and we have a lot of different things in our videos too. So it's not just like this week we're talking about shoes. We have shoes, and we have comments, and we have a story and another story and a couple different aspects. Because what we were finding out was if we show you a story with shoes and we make our first minute and a half about shoes, then everyone turns off.
Oh yeah, we'll have a lot more to say about that
right,
specifically next week. But
when you have an image, could be this one being, I can't put my shoes on any faster, is the title.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we just have a picture of really bright shoes.
And I think part of the image that we are trying to convey, we're getting weirder. We're indulging our weirder impulses. If that's to believe that we can get any weirder, but we are. We're really going for less connected with reality, and that advice that tends towards, show a face, make it friendly and open your video with like, hey folks, and today we're going to talk about this and this and this, let's go. We're trying to make a departure from all that. And so if our marketing material is all, hey folks, and then you click on and it's all weird, first of all, the people who do click on that because that's what they want are going to be disappointed, and the people who don't want that but might want something weird are not going to click on that because they don't trust, hey folks. So this kind of, we're trying to now make an image that's still appealing. We still, it's never a good marketing strategy to be specifically off-putting, but that's appealing, but also closer to the aesthetic you're going to find once you click into the video. So making the packaging match what's inside.
Yeah, you don't want to advertise falsely.
Yeah. So that's, boots was the big, put my shoes on. That's the big experiment this week. And then I guess you did go back and simplify some of the older thumbnails as well.
Well, a lot of what they
I guess I'll put a link up to our videos page, and you can just look at them all next to each other. Peter works pretty hard on those, and they're pretty good looking, I think.
What they say, along with putting on your face, is to put like just a little bit of text. It's a place to give more description as to what's inside. And that gets hard because it's a thumbnail, it's the size of a thumb, so you're looking at how much information can I stick on here to get somebody to come in. And we've tried a lot of information, And
Yeah.
we tried a medium amount of it. Now we're trying almost no information.
Yeah, I mean, minimalism is an enduring aesthetic for a reason.
Yeah, and
I think
hopefully
we're finding.
hopefully that'll stick out for on a page full of so many pictures with so much information all over them, to see a pair of red boots with a yellow background that should stick off the page. And maybe you hate shoes, so you wouldn't like it, but
Yeah. But yeah, so that's our business. Anything last words?
I'm good.
Okay. Let's go on to homeschool film school. Our topic this week is what to do or how to handle disagreeing with a collaborator. Because this week's other video that we posted about Llama Island, Peter and I actually had a very significant disagreement about it. And we work together really well, I think. Partially because we have the same vision, and partially because the Venn diagram of our skills doesn't have a strong overlap. Like, I feel like you have your areas that are yours and my area that are mine, and we both have feelings about what the other one does, but really, like...
It makes it easier for us to have different kinds of skills that I draw, you write.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'll illustrate a picture. You give me a story, I'll illustrate it.
Yeah, and it's not like I've composed a competing theme song and like we have to decide whose is better.
Yeah, this ain't the Beatles.
Yeah. So it is like our skills support each other and they don't often conflict. But this sometimes we do have disagreements with how the direction that we want to go. And this one,
What was the main one?
I know,
Love Island.
I don't want to point out exactly what I was not happy with, because I don't want you, the viewer, to go look for what I wasn't happy with. But you had to recut the voiceover in a way that was different from how I wrote it, and that I felt undercut the meaning of what I was trying to convey.
Right. Well, to begin with, this was a video that had old footage from years past that we had filmed, so we had a certain amount of what we have on film. I have these pictures. Could you write a story to that? So, and when I hand it off to you...
Yeah, and then so I look at the pictures and write the story that I think goes with the pictures, and then the challenging part of that is that it's not about like all the words I want to say. It has to fit to what the pictures are. And so if I have a lot to say about this, but the clip is only 2 seconds long, I only get to take 2 seconds about it. And then if we have we don't have to use all 4 minutes, but if it's like the centerpiece of what the video is, I do have to write something substantial, even if, that's not how I would have written a piece that was just written. Or if we were composing a piece together from the start, we would go out and plan a different way to shoot the footage. But at the time, we were not going to go back to Llama Island and shoot more footage. We had archive footage and we had the current voiceover, and so that's the tools we had. And that's not particularly artful, but this is where you have skills working at a newspaper. Somebody says, look, I've got these 3 photographs, you can use one of them. Yeah.
And you also only have 400 words.
Right, right. So it's not a situation that I was unfamiliar with, but it's not a situation I particularly like either.
We're trying to stop doing that.
Yeah, that
as long as no one's paying us to do it.
We're going to do exactly what we want. And when I say we had a disagreement, it felt big at the time. I think I maybe even cried.
Well, it was upsetting because both of us knew we weren't happy with what we were doing.
Yeah. But it was still it was less good than our other stuff, instead of it's the worst. We just wouldn't have put it out if it was the worst.
Yeah, it turned out fine, and you can kind of tell it because it doesn't have an ending, which is a problem with a lot of people. Not even just on YouTube, but professionals. how many shows have you watched that are like 6 seasons in that you're just like, that last season was crap.
Yeah.
I mean, but even like an episode of a certain show can just end with.
Yeah, endings are hard.
Yeah.
But I think.
And we didn't have an ending for this one.
Yeah.
And it kind of got mungled between the two story.
Well, because initially watching it, because you had done this before with some of my stuff, like shuffled stuff around to make it fit, and it was usually fine. And I can't say like why this time didn't feel fine, but it was like initially I was just like, it doesn't work and it doesn't logically flow anymore because you had switched around the order of how some stuff went.
Right.
And then I was like ego bruised about that a little bit, and so then I had to get to the point of like articulate exactly what's wrong with it so that we can try to fix it, because I think even I was mad, so I was like, well, we'll just put it up, it's fine. And you were like, it's not fine if you don't like it. So that's, at least one of us was being
well, at first you
mature.
You had a hard time expressing what it was. Like, I knew it was, things were messed about in the how the story was written, the timeline was screwed up, and it kind of came down to, I think you were like, but we didn't eat chips or something at that point, or it was something small that I was like, well, but do the chips matter? Like, is that the problem? And
I will admit from this vantage point that part of it was just like, this wasn't my intent. So if it still works or doesn't work, it's not what I intended. So to me, it didn't work. But then I had to like actually figure out what didn't work, and it turned out to be. Oh yeah, it was like Fritos or something.
Yeah.
I know I didn't want to identify exactly the problem, but this is relevant because then we ended up like fractions of a second pushing the dialogue to make a pause in a new place. That to me fixed it. I think to you were just
it's
happy that I was happy with it.
It was amount of where does a sentence end and another sentence begin, because that starts another thought. It's like, where do you put a paragraph? If you glue two paragraphs together, then you're going to end up with a weird blob of text that, as a reader now, I got to look and piece out what matters. Mm-hmm. And as a writer, you're probably going like, that's a different thought than there was up here. So it's going to matter to somebody. From a visual standpoint, to me, it looked fine, but
right. And if you weren't listening to what the words were, it sounded fine. But there was like, and we got later into sound editing, like fractions of a second matter in how the meaning is perceived. And so I think that actually was like, we spent a long, long time trying to get the timing exactly right, but I think that was like really valuable to figure out.
We did the same thing with a lot of them, but like with field notes.
Yeah.
That was another one there were certain points where it really came down to snipping up your dialogue that you'd already recorded in sequence and then kind of messing with it back and forth, and it always came down to like just tiny, not drastic changes. You would think that like this will only take a minute to do, but you're moving on the timeline, dialogue up, down, down, up, back and forth, and just not happy with any of it until like it hits that one perfect second, and you're like, that's what I meant.
And I think like much like tuning your guitar, the advice is if you can't hear if it's sharp or flat, go further into the mistake, and then you can hear like, oh, that's flat. And so I think we even did that. We're like, well, okay, this is too close together. Let's put it really far apart, and then bring it back. And so we did get through it. But I think that
we're still here.
Yeah, we continued posting videos. But I think that in that incident, that event, made it...
We call it Fritos. Frito Day.
Made it clear, because I don't think we had ever articulated it before, that like, we're not going to put up a video if one of us is not happy with it. And that, I think, that's important to make explicit, because if it was if we had gone a different way, if I had steamrolled you into putting it back, or you had steamrolled me into saying, like, no, the new way is fine,
Right.
that would have not been good for our future collaboration.
The closest we came to before was with KTV, was we had put it up, and I listened back to it. I think we made a few mistakes, and we finally got one up, and then listening to it online,
Oh, the sound
the
wasn't
sound
right.
was kind of fizzling out in a few points, and it's kind of a messy sound anyways, so that extra little bit of like the hard bite of digital was attacking the sound and making it hard to hear what you were saying. So from a sound standpoint, I was like, we can't keep this up, I have to take this down. And so you said, yeah, so that was maybe the first time where we're like, well, we got to agree,
Yeah.
or else. So when it came to like your side, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I got to do the same.
Yeah, so that it's maybe we didn't even say it out loud till now, but it has to be unanimous that we both think something is good, or we won't put it up.
Yeah.
And then I think, procedurally, because often part of what works about the collaborating, having a good collaborator, is I know something's not working, but I don't know what's not working, so I can show it to you, and maybe you see what's not working, or you can see, you have a suggestion that like makes it clearer what's not working.
Yeah. Well, I like you.
But then if you, so that's the key, is like you have to identify what's not working, not just that it's not working.
Like you've said a bunch of times, with if it was just you, or if it was just me, if you were, we look at other YouTubers that are doing it by themselves, filming everything themselves, writing, doing, whatever they do, music or animation, whatever it is, to do it by yourself is terrifying. Have no one else to look at and go like, does this seem right to you at all? Something seems wrong to me.
Yeah.
And if at that point it was just like, well, you can't figure it out, I'm just going to put it up. And then just sitting there going like, I don't even know what the problem is, I'm just not happy with this.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah. Which isn't to say that every video we put up are like, oh, it's perfect.
Oh, there's mistakes in every video. Plenty.
But they're mistakes that we feel, given our resources and given the quality of everything else around it, they're mistakes we can live with. And in this video, and maybe a couple,
well, to decide that was this,
yeah.
Whatever the example is, example X is as good as we can do right now. Maybe in the future we can do something better, but for this one right now, that's good.
Yeah, and I guess that's, how do we decide a mistake is fine, or that, I felt weird taking a stand over what turned out to be a fraction of a second, but it was also like, I couldn't live with that. And I don't know what makes that decision.
Well, and it kind of goes back a little bit to what we were saying a week or 2 weeks ago or something, with when do you know a piece of work is finished?
Yeah.
Well, it helps if you know that none of it really drives me up the wall because it feels wrong. That's a good place to start.
Right. Well, and I think more egotistically, mistakes that make me as the writer or performer, less performer because I'm less precious about that, because that's like a thing I'm new to and figuring out and I take less seriously, which is maybe working for me. But anyway, if it's something that I like in a know-it-all kind of way, am like upset that people think I don't know, I think that might be where I draw my line.
Right, well,
like, this makes me look like I don't know how to construct a logical story, I think is something I yelled at you.
Well, even on stuff like when we're doing promo work, because both of us have to respond to comments on our videos on YouTube, or if we're sending something out to Facebook, or whatever we're doing, we both have to like do correspondence with other people to promote our work. And sometimes, like just recently, I made like something totally stupid, like I spelled a your or an obvious mistake that I know better, and I sent it out, and you're like, crap. Of course I know how to spell it right, but like I didn't at the time get it. you're the writer, that's your job. If like we sent out a picture and like it was too small and so everything was pixelated, I would say, whoa, what'd you send that out for? That's wrong.
Right. Yeah, so I guess the mistakes that we feel make us look bad are the ones that like cannot stand. But if some mistakes don't make us look bad, they can stick around. Or it's prohibitive to fix. Because there is like, performance-wise, I'm much more relaxed about that because, like I said, that's the thing I'm kind of new at, and it's just for fun. But also, I would say there's stuff up now that it was. If we were in a situation where we had like an extra day to re-record or whatever, I would have re-recorded it. But it's not so important to me that I would want to throw us totally off the schedule. That, I mean, it's only our own schedule, but maintaining our own deadline and discipline is also important to getting our work done. So it is like, we can't push the whole schedule back for something that feels pretty minor. And we definitely can't like re-record stuff. That's kind of one of the rules that we made for ourselves to like.
Right. Well,
because perfectionism, perfect is the enemy of good. So that's the line we've drawn.
There's a certain amount of what we want to keep that's punk rock.
Also
like that's
we're also punk
some
rock.
Some of it's totally fine to be like, that's a little sloppy. I mean, that's an okay sloppy. And it's interesting too that some of that also comes from working in newspapers. At the end of the day, the paper's going to go out, and you just hope and pray no one made a mistake because they might get fired. We're not going to get fired for this, so like, we could get taken off YouTube if we make some kind of terrible slip of.
Well, I don't think you get taken off of YouTube for a mistake.
Right? Yeah, yeah. You've made a choice of some kind.
Oops! I embezzled.
Right. But yeah, there's that sense of like, we want this to go out in a certain time. What's all the check boxes that need to be checked before something goes out?
Yeah.
And if a few of them are like, that's not on the check box, I'd like to fix that, then we can put that aside because that's okay.
Yeah.
We're not worried about it.
And like stuff like, we also don't want a shoot to take all day. Like with the giraffe, with the screen, as you've seen last week and this week, and you'll continue to see, we're getting a little better at lighting, but it is like we reach a certain point where the lighting for the day, it's better than last week and it's good enough. It's not perfect, but we have other things to do.
That's the basic rule of thumb for anything creative. Is just make sure that each time you do something, you try to make it a little bit better than last time, and that's a success. Yeah.
Which, this is off the topic because we agree about this.
We disagree about agreeing, but we agree about it.
Yeah. But, Peter and I don't disagree very often for the reasons I said. And when we do, I think that the key is the objecting party just can't say it's not right. The objecting party has to have something specific that needs to be addressed. They don't have to have the exact answer, but they have to be able to identify the problem at least.
Right, which is, I guess, with anything of any kind of, like, debating, or once again, professionally, working at a newspaper, you could argue with your editor of, like, I need this in, and the editor says, but you don't. And the editor wins. But we're more democratic than that.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Your editor might listen to you, but...
Yeah, if you got a good editor, that's wonderful.
And sometimes your editor is right when they just like draw the line, like, you don't.
Yeah, well, usually the editor has more experience than you, so they probably are right, unless they're just a jerk.
And, I mean, the editor-writer relationship is different from the collaborator. There is a hierarchy, and whereas we are equals.
Right. As partners.
Yeah, as partners.
So
yeah, that's disagreeing. We agree that
we agree to agree.
We agree that we're awesome. We're not going to switch segments just yet, though, because Peter and I, after last week's discussion, where I was so tired and not explaining myself very well, so I'll recap, hopefully with a little more explanation, because we talked about it more this week, that my point was, you can have an idea, and then the execution of that idea might affect how that idea is perceived. And so to kind of bring this into the realm of understandable outside my head, an example I have, okay, so noodles, what's noodles called?
It was noodles for you. It is now right out of my reach. The best and the spiciest Chinese noodle soup.
Yeah, so the best and the spiciest Chinese noodle soup, video from last year, versus Don't Change Your Clothes, which is a video from a few weeks ago. 2 weeks ago? Last week? I don't know. Anyway, so noodles takes, something very simple as its subject matter, and I try to come at it in an explainy, comprehensive, tell you all the stories that relate to it kind of way. And so it is very much the rhetorical purpose is to inform. Whereas clothes is about, ostensibly the fact that in China it's okay to wear the same outfit a couple days in a row. But the purpose of that video is not to inform. So we come at it, we have a whole different apparatus for conveying the feeling around our aesthetic rather than I need you to know exactly this idea. Does that make sense to you?
I think so.
And because I could do a whole video in the style of noodles where I give you examples of people wearing outfits, times that I wore outfits more than one day in a row, and then maybe a little speculation as to the customs and the environmental effects of not having so many clothes to wash, and I could give you a bunch of facts and try to make you understand exactly everything I know about why people wear the same outfit more than one day in a row. But so the idea would still be about wearing the same clothes multiple times, but it would be a totally different experience to watch.
So are you saying explaining why you can explain noodles? A noodle has a certain mouthfeel, it has a certain spice.
Yeah.
You could explain clothes of I didn't do the laundry this week, or
yeah, I'm so the same nut of an idea is there, but our approach to it is so different that I don't think, they're on our channel, the same channel, but they count as different kinds of entertainment because of the stylistic choices we made rather than any kind of informational choices. Noodles are noodles, whether we're being weird about them or not. Another example that maybe is even better is Park Life, which is a recent giraffe video, versus A Walk in Rural China, which is from a couple years ago. And A Walk in Rural China is a very serious essay drawing on memories and deep thoughts and philosophical musings as we show you the scenery of rural China, whereas Park Life is also out in nature, in a park, but I'm telling you weird, disjointed anecdotes of being in a park.
And those two, you have two totally different storytelling functions. One's a narrative,
right,
of you going in and out of the countryside. The other one is walking through the park and naming things that you see.
Yeah, and I think but they both come from the same genesis of outside,
yeah.
Which for this indoor person gets to be a category of things. But yeah, that our, I guess this is me as a writer. I had to kind of work through. I'm not making up new ideas. There are no new ideas under the sun, which is like a quote that's already hundreds of years old. It's not the ideas necessarily that I'm trying to invent. It's the presentation of those ideas and the development of our style. And I think that style gets a bad rap of like, style versus substance, blah, blah, blah. But I think the style is also important.
Certainly from a visual standpoint, I mean, every choice that I make in illustrating your stories is nothing but style. What kind of style, whether it's going to be you walking through the countryside, there's a style in that's just try to capture the outside, the trees, the farmland. There's no soundtrack in the countryside, so there's no music in that one, as opposed to the other one is you walking through a fake man-made park.
Right.
And so my soundtrack to that is a fictitious electronic Dvorak or something.
Yeah.
So that's all style, and I put lots of different pictures in different ways, as if you were, flipping through, watching an MTV video or something like that, as opposed to something that's closer to being like documentary.
Yeah, but that the consideration of style is not shallow, because that's the vehicle that's conveying your idea. So is that clearer?
That's also a kind of a problem with something like YouTube, is that people say, don't do that from video to video. Don't
change your style.
Yeah, because you're going to confuse everybody. So in that sense, you're sort of stifled. Like if one of those videos were to take off for us, the conventional wisdom would be just do that video over and over and over again.
Right. Whereas for us, because our goal isn't to blow up big overnight, our goal is to find our voice, to find our house style. So for now, it does make sense for us to experiment with all these different aspects of presentation.
And some of that house style is doing experimentation of different styles. If you were doing, if we decided to do one as a crime drama, I'm going to use lots of black and shadows or something.
Yeah, and that's a good point of even the lighting that you use conveys, a signifier, to get all analytical literature theory on you. But because I think somehow we've gotten in this culture an idea of that there is, and this I want to be very careful about how I choose my words, because lies are definitely lies, and you can hurt people by concealing the facts.
Or misrepresenting them.
Yeah. Lies are lies, and liars do damage. But in a more aesthetical world, there's no such thing as unvarnished facts and truth. Everything you do, your word choice, your lighting choices, your frames, your performance, those are all choices that can kind of affect how your message is being conveyed. And I think, especially the culture of, this baffles me, I know that you like them, and I don't want to bash on you, but video essays of I'm going to explain everything in the world to you. It feels like we're digging. I've discovered postmodernism this week. That's all it is.
Well, with in particular, and not even a defense of most of them are terrible. They're dull.
They're interesting. Some of them are interesting
Some of them are
ideas.
fantastic.
But it still is what is.
It depends on what level.
Why are you explaining so much stuff to me?
Well, some people might not have discovered postmodernism or whatever they're going for. This may be something new, and they're excited to tell other people about it. And so, you know, if it's something that you wrote,
I can understand being excited about a new idea, but then I never had the impulse to then like turn around and explain it to millions of people.
Yeah, like how have you suddenly become an expert at this thing that you've just learned? Or even maybe you've been working on it for a few years or something, but like it does tend to be, you know, hey, I just read this new book, and now let me tell you everything I just learned from that new book now that I finished it last week.
I realize that I'm railing against this from my own podcast where I explain my art to you. So yeah, I realize that, but I think what I was trying to explain last week is that postmodernism means that choices affect how our truth is perceived. And we are making different choices these days, so our videos are pretty different than what we were making last year.
Yeah, and sometimes they're kind of the same.
And sometimes they're kind of the same. Cause, well, that's an interesting thing that we found is like, we have kind of a cycle through different ideas. We'll like focus in on different aspects of what we're doing, and then kind of drift away from something else, and then like focus back in on that. And it does seem to be the same ideas keep coming up every 6 months or so that we're like, and we choose to see that as like we're kind of on a track.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're progressing. You have like one thing that you're like, that was kind of cool, but you kind of get bored of it, and then you stow it away for a little bit, and then you think about it and get back to it, and you're like, whoa, I was onto something. Why didn't I keep going? Well, I needed some time to ferment.
Yeah, and I think like if I may give this away, the existential vlog.
In case you've never been to our front channel.
Yeah, I mean it's on our banner, so that's an idea that you came up with maybe a year ago.
Yeah, about a year.
That rather than being a China vlog, we're not talking about just China, we're talking about existence itself. And then, like, you could argue whether all of our output is existential or not.
Well, even that has its own, like, does that mean, like, if you type in existential on YouTube, it's all about crisis? And
right.
So, like, how do you define that as a word, as the absurdist of it means anything? So we don't have to be like, in this video, we're going to teach you how to keep your visa in check when you're in China. Like, that's not what we're doing. Although that might give you existential crisis.
Oh, it gives me existential crisis. But, so we came up with that last year, and we started, like, bending towards that, and then we kind of, experimented with other stuff. And then just, like, a few weeks ago, you were like, what if we go back to that idea of, like, we're not talking about specific facts or how-tos or whatever. We're sharing our existence with you.
Which circles even back to what we were just saying with the thumbnails of going from like a flat out, this is your face, and you are playing with some kind of, gimmick or something, some kind of prop, as opposed to like, I'm just going to show your shoes. Like, that's, pop art itself is existential.
Yeah. So, that seems like a good wrap up. Let's go to commentary.
Oh, crap. I double hit the button. Never mind. Go.
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk about 3 videos this week. 2 on Hello Foreigner and then 1 on Western Toilet, because Peter's been putting out... Western Toilet is our music channel where Peter publishes music videos using the scores that he writes for our vlogs. And, they deserve some attention too, so we're going to start talking about those in the commentary section every week. But first, I want to talk about Llama Island, which we introduced to you as the source of disagreement for Peter and I. But actually, as a video, well, again, that time was an existential crisis for us. We were like, we should make a travel video, but we don't know if we want to be travel video vloggers. And then from a practical standpoint, it was our first attempt at a green screen, and it really didn't work. So Peter had to be somewhat creative with how he addressed that, and that
we did it with, first of all, without a green screen.
Yeah, we had a blue sheet.
Yeah.
That was not blue enough, and we did not have
full of wrinkles and.
Yeah, we didn't have adequate lighting.
So I just had to draw in around you.
Yeah. So that took quite a bit of time, as I recall.
Yeah.
And then, so, to fudge some of what was not working in green screen, you added some post-production elements. Which were mostly my face, right?
Yeah, I basically just taking your image and doing weird, funny things with it, turning it into different graphic elements or little Emily friends that pop up here and there to not really tell the story. Basically, you do tell the story. How do we get to Llama? Why would we go to Llama Island? Where is Llama Island? How do we get to Llama Island? What do we do when we get there? All those are there, and we have some pictures of Llama Island.
Yeah.
But there isn't like that much of a story of like when you get to Llama Island, you could get these kinds of crabs, or you could go to this beach, or like all we did was we just took a boat there and sat there.
Yeah.
So my sense of like what am I going to do with this is like, well, let's just get weird with it, and I'll make weird creature versions of you that creep around the island.
And I think after the fact, I can justify that as a creative choice because Llama Island, we do genuinely love it there, and we love going to Hong Kong, but it was a period of time where like we were having a lot of paperwork issues, specifically proving that Peter was actually married to me, because we just we couldn't get the paperwork right. So we ended up, because Peter he wasn't working, so we weren't doing anything illegal, but he was on a tourist visa, so we'd have to leave every 2 months, and the quickest way to
go through was Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But Hong Kong's too expensive, and Llama Island was a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
And so when we found Llama Island, this was a place for us to go relax for the weekend while we had to go through all this paperwork.
Yeah, and we loved Llama Island, but it was like representative of like kind of a chaotic time where we were really unsure of it. Just like it was the worst, and it was like every 2 months I was like, this time it's going to be it, we'll have all the right papers, and no we don't. And it would like, so it would always be like kind of a last minute chaotic surprise, and
because you're border hopping, all you have to do is get over to Llama Island, then you have nothing to do. You could just go across the border and come back.
We did that once. We literally walked across the border and turned around and came back into mainland China. But that also...
But that's not what we were doing for most of the time. Most of the time...
We don't live close to Hong Kong, so, like, we do need to make it a couple days trip for it to be, like, worth anything.
So once we got over to Llama Island, it was a beautiful, warm island with great food, and we just kind of sat there going, like, oh, boy, we love it here. Why don't we just move here?
Yeah, so after the fact of making this video, I can say, like, that's the sense of alienation and disruption that you're trying to capture with those different weirdo faces, but I don't think that was consciously part of our creative process at the time.
Well, we were also, again, talking about existentialism, but also kind of against making travel videos. We were sort of wailing against the flow.
Right. Which is like, it's strange because no one was telling us to do anything. Mm-hmm. Like, we are our own bosses, and we didn't like the bosses that we had at the time.
So we aggressively took it off on our video and on the island that we love.
Which, to be clear, are two separate bad times. The racing back and forth from Hong Kong happened a year before we made the video about that. Or 2 years, but and then
in any event,
we were like in a YouTube rut, so it was like a perfect storm of like, let's express our alienation through film.
And as it comes out, we're both very happy with the video, and it's just really weird. So, but people are looking at like, oh, I've always wanted to go to Llama Island. I think I'll check that out. You're going to be terrified by what we did to it.
Yeah.
We're excited about it, but
well, because I also do have a genuine. Sorry, I'm so wiggly. A genuine feeling of like. People should know about Llama Island, but also not too many people should know about Llama Island because part of its charm is that it's not central Hong Kong full of people. It's like
there's no
this
cars allowed.
sleepy little bedroom community with like lots of nature and so don't go to Llama Island. And so for me, part of it was like the snottiness of making a travel video that told you not to go to a place, which at least one person interpreted as we didn't like Llama Island. We got that comment of like, if you don't like China, go home, which is like, that's not at all what we were trying to say with that video. So yeah, there's...
That's going to happen no matter what you do.
I think, the video's great. It's fine. But there's a lot.
Well, there's a part.
There's a lot of feelings about it.
There's a part of what we're about that's in that, and sometimes we're just. I mean, why you would call it it's art. I mean. Yeah. We did what we felt we needed to do with it, and good for us.
Yeah, and I guess that's some of the choices you are making about your artwork are subconscious. And it's just like they're identifiable now, those subconscious choices.
Yeah.
But it did okay, right?
It did pretty good the first time around. It's a little slower this time around.
Yeah. Did you promote it anywhere?
Not as hard as most stuff, but fairly regular.
Yeah.
I guess people just weren't into Hong Kong this time around.
It's fine. Our other video on Hello Foreigner was I can't put my shoes on any faster, which is about my angst over everyone else seems to be able to put on their shoes faster than I can, which is something
that's in the video.
That's in the video. And this one we continue expanding on the green screen, and we continue expanding on like having the different segments, which I think this is where we've started to push, like originally the giraffe has 4 parts: a story, a Taobao purchase, a complaint, and a viewer comment. And then we've just kept expanding on those to include like previous Taobao updates and different things. And like Peter suggested that we're not a newsroom. These don't have to be like real actual segments. I mean, like they're real because they say we are, but we could make up like different stuff every week and just call it a segment, and we're allowed to do that.
Yeah, well, it becomes what we're doing is we're telling stories, and they're small stories. There's nothing big here, and they're not stories of telling you how to live your life as an expat in China. We're just saying like this is.
Because I think these small.
It's what a vlog is. This is what happened to my vacuum this week. There's a story.
And to get back into the postmodern discussion that will never die, I think it's those small ideas that people can relate to and internalize easier, and I think are more entertaining, to be honest.
It's what I'm interested in.
If it is like a big whole history of like why Chinese people take their shoes off inside and every kind of shoe, and like if the that's boring. I don't want a book report about that.
Yeah, at what year it was decided that your shoes were too dirty, so you had to wear a certain kind of shoe, and the invention of a slipper, and what
right, and why the classic Chinese slipper has that one strap.
Yeah, you can go to school. You can go to school for that. For us, we're dressing up as giraffes and playing weird.
Right, because it's also our subject matter isn't China. It's existentialism.
And it's
but I think it is like through these segments we can give you little snippets that add up to a bigger impression of our life than if we were just talking about one subject for 7 minutes straight.
Yeah, and a lot of those are depending on what we have. I mean, 1 week you may only have one story, and we may not have any comments from anybody else.
Yeah.
Or we might have 10 comments and we might have 10 stories. Like, there's no reason why we should tie it down to any one thing. But the bottom line is that you're going to have stories every week of something silly that happened to you. There's something when you went to the grocery store or whatever, or a little story that you'd like to tell somebody. And if we can think of a neat way to illustrate it, this is where we can figure out different ways of whether it's through film or animation or you just telling a story, however, make a musical out of it. Who cares?
Yeah. I mean, because I do every day, come home from work or come home from wherever I've been outside, like, I'm already telling a story to Peter about something that just happened to me, like, as I walk in the door.
And everyone does that when you get home. You want somebody around to be able to tell a story to at the end of the day. How was your day? Well, that's what a vlog is.
I saw a baby in this magnificent stroller that was like a total custom hot rod job made out of PVC piping, and he's standing in the front like he's in Mad Max Fury Road. Like these little snapshots, literally, of like just funny things I saw. We're taking those and telling all of you, not just to Peter.
Right. That's a vlog.
Yeah.
But we're just trying to figure out a way to make it a little more entertaining than just kind of sitting next to your friend on a bed.
Yeah.
We're trying to find...
maybe your friend's funny. But also this one, we had a lot of green screen fun with the marching shoes. That's like...
At this point now...
Every pair of shoes I own, I put on and just like stomped around in.
Yeah, at this point now we're predominantly screen.
Yeah.
And everything else is fished in, filmed in, brought in.
But I think that's the challenge then, is to find what to put in the background.
Yeah.
So we're actually filming a lot more insets.
Or if it's something that we go out.
Yeah.
Into the streets to do.
And then now is back, right? It's in this one. And then now we thought of that last fall, I believe. It's the most existential thing we do, I think. But it's my favorite segment. Is your favorite segment?
Yeah, probably.
I love it, and I'm so glad.
Well,
I feel like it's such a simple invitation to just like enjoy our world, enjoy Luzhou, and I literally film it like most of the shots are taken on the same block from my apartment to my job, but I think like for me, finding all these different angles on the same subject matter or literally the same area is really fun for me, and I think...
Well, it tells a story. What we really... Part of what we do is telling our story of living in this town called Luzhou. And what we want to... If we're saying anything about China, we don't know anything about China. Yeah. What we do know is about Luzhou. We've lived here for years. And we want to show you our neighborhood. What do we see when we leave our house? And this is a perfect way of capturing 10 little segments a week of what does it look like if you were to walk outside and sit on the stoop with us and just take a minute and look at our neighbors that walk by every day. And who are these people? That's people watching.
Yeah, and it's mindfulness. But yeah, I love And Then Now, and I'm so happy that it's back. I hope that you like it too. But I don't care if you like it. I love it. Anything else about the shoes?
Shoes were great. Was there any other segments in there that was different? Just some. Everything else is
the same.
We've got a rhythm. We've got comments. We've got little bits and pieces. So
which we are about to totally abandon. Preview. So then let's switch over to Western Toilet. Where Peter also posted the score for shoes, which because we had this image. So I told, like we've said in the past, I tell Peter what the basic premise of the story is ahead of time, but I don't actually tell him the story till we sit down to film. So he hears it for the first time when the camera hears it, but he starts thinking of visual ideas to go with what I'm saying. And so I had told him it was about shoes, taking off your shoes and putting on your shoes. So he came up with this concept of the all my shoes marching, and then so you wrote kind of a march.
Right, the music
marching tune to go with it.
Yeah. And so then the video for Western Toilet, for the musical segment, is just dug into, and in the regular vlog itself, was we had footage from a sports day from our first year, 2011?
Yeah, it was the spring of 2012, yeah.
So we just
it was the Olympics, so they had like a mini
was.
Olympics at the school, and our school's big enough. That school was like, I don't know, 10,000 kids, so it was like a little Olympics at the school.
Right. And we just had a ton of footage of that. So we just used that in the music video. So just to keep that theme of marching along, and it's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids marching.
Yeah. And what they're doing, I don't know, I think there's clues in the video anyway, that it's a parade, it's the Parade of Nations.
Oh yeah, they have costumes.
Each class was assigned a different nation. They some classes didn't prepare till the night before because academics are the most important thing. So often they had extracurricular events like this, but often it was not like what I would consider prepared for. So some of them were like Argentina. I think the whole theme was they wore yellow shirts.
Or if they had like they needed drums, so they ran around at the last minute getting water cooler drums to run.
Yeah, that
pick
was
up all
awesome.
the ones around the whole campus and then just thumped them.
Yeah.
Around the circle.
And one class I remember, like, someone had a violin, but I don't think it was a person who could play a violin. Yeah. So they were just like march, 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 and then. And then so that
it was too, and
it was called the Parade of Nations, but I don't think there was anything very accurate about it. But they had fun. Yeah.
So the idea of Western Toilet has itself kind of evolved in using a lot of extra material that we've either had from the past or from what we've shot for this week's video. Might be so the storyline of maybe not the best footage is reused in a more artistic way.
Yeah.
So, but the story keeps going. Like if you go back a few weeks to Straight Out of Luzhou, I forgot what video that went with. I
forget too.
But on Western Toilet, it's Straight Out of Luzhou, and that's just a drive in a taxi cab that we had through Luzhou from downtown out into the countryside. One camera shot that we've just had sitting around for the longest time, and that seemed like the greatest place to use that. Like now you get to see what it's like to go from downtown to the countryside, and it's a simple video to go with the music, but that's a little extra. I mean, in a way, that's another vlog. We're finding different ways, just like this, to expand our story.
Yeah, and so if you are looking for it, it's kind of less mediated footage of our experience in China.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, sometimes, like for the park, I had taken a lot of photos and video when I was in the park, so we used it for the vlog, and then in the music video there was additional footage and imagery that we could put into that video. But sometimes, like this week or Straight Out of Luzhou, they're footage that's like a couple years old, but that just can give you a glimpse into a side of China you don't see that often.
We like to be not recycling, but we there's material that doesn't get used. Yeah. It's perfectly fine. It's just it didn't fit into the story. Just like we were saying, like with Long Island, Like there comes like there's this much of footage, and what do we do with this extra stuff? Throw it away? Don't throw it away.
Yeah.
We might use it somewhere else, and this is a good place to start using it.
Yeah. And, like, some of it was footage that when we were not serious about making vlogs, we were just more interested in
just taking photos.
Yeah.
For
that we made into music videos with other people's music. Which those videos are not up anymore because
we don't want to get demonetized.
Yeah.
But more importantly,
we don't make any money. But that we don't, our work, the work that's online now is all original work, and so we don't want to confuse that with like, wait, this isn't your song, so that we've taken that down. But that footage still is
our footage.
It's beautiful footage. So now we get the chance to show it off alongside original compositions by Peter.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Let's go on to Watch It.
Watch it.
We have another double recommendation for Watch It this week. 2 shows that are ending or have ended, but are both on Netflix, so you can catch up anytime. The first one is One Day at a Time, which is the updated reimagining of Norman Lear's
One Day at a
One
Time.
Day at a Time. With a Cuban family, Cuban-American family. And it's so funny and so touching, and also is like straight up sitcom. It's
old school, just to get, I mean, whatever, 4-camera stage.
Yeah.
Like
Soundstage. Set up joke punchline, very conventional.
Very broad.
And Norman Lear is like in his 90s.
He's like 160.
Yeah, he's a million years old. And I'm not sure how active he is in the writer's room, but he does make a creative contribution, and he knows what he's doing. So I think
and it's amazing.
He knows the rules of sitcom.
It's amazing that somebody who was so thoughtful all those decades back, bringing new TV, can be still doing the same thing. And we still have the same problems.
Yeah, and because he's still pushing the boundaries on social issues through the lens of this Cuban-American family. There's a lot to explore there, and it's as far as like issues go, it handles them like really. It's entertaining. It's not preachy, but it is like you really feel for these people who are having these struggles, and it's not all just about like immigrant struggles. It's all about being.
Yeah, it's a good family show.
Yeah.
In this sense of what One Day at a Time was, the story of a single mother and taking care of her
family. Which is less controversial this time around.
Right. That's what it was first. This time it's Cuban.
Yeah.
But still a single mother. And so those problems are inherent in the idea. But where are they now is where we're going with that, you know.
Yeah. And sadly, Netflix isn't going to renew it for a 4th season, which it wrapped up satisfyingly if you're worried about your sitcoms leaving you hanging. This one doesn't. And in this age of network flexibility, it might come back somewhere else, which is that would be welcome news. It's like a solid, funny show.
Yeah, it's got great characters, great actors. I mean, it.
What's her name? Grandma. Oh, Rita Moreno.
Mm-hmm.
National treasure. She's so wonderful. She's hilarious. So yeah, go watch that if you haven't. And then the other show is Schitt's Creek, SCHITTS.
So we don't get demonetized.
Yeah. Which is a Canadian show written and created by Eugene Levy's son, Dan Levy. And with Eugene and Catherine O'Hara playing the parents. And this was something that the premise is a rich family comes down in the world. They lose all their money and they have to live in this backwater town in Canada. And it just it didn't sound that appealing to us when we started watching it, but we gave it a chance, and it is
mostly because of Eugene Levy.
Yeah, and Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah. Then turns out
it's one
Dan
of
Levy,
the weirdest, funniest shows.
Chris Elliott's on it.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And it turns out to be really forwardly thinking, heartfelt. There's a lot of the characters.
They're these it's the socialite family that they compare to the Kardashians of empty, vapid, totally out of touch with the real world. And what develops over the course of these 4 or 5 seasons is that a real sense of heart.
They learn to become human, and you really these characters that you start off with the first episode of I'm going to hate these people.
Yeah.
They really, I don't know, fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I think by the second season, you're just I'm really liking these guys.
Yeah, they're it's a fun group, and even it's such a good ensemble cast too.
Yeah.
It's a small town weirdos kind of thing, and you want to spend time with these people.
It's a little Green Acres, a little Bob Newhart in that sense.
Yeah, and it is.
Which is why we bring this one up with One Day at the Time, that it has a throwback feel to the 70s
there's something very
80s
conventional about it, but it is also pulling off something very unique, I think.
Yeah, for our time.
And this one too is the creator's decision. The next season is going to be the last season. But again, it's satisfying. So. And
it's damn funny.
And it's laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
And I wish I could do impressions, because everyone's performance is so mannered and wonderful, and just
That's an impression.
Yeah.
Everyone, all the actors in it are characters you're going to remember for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and you will wish you could impersonate them too. But you can't.
Don't even try.
But look for the supercut of Schitt's Creek characters saying David. It's hilarious. I'll link to that too. That was pretty good, actually.
No, not bad.
And I just read an interesting. We're thinking about networking, which is shy people. You're not shy, but you don't like necessarily socializing. But it turns out networking is hugely important always. More than talent, knowing people is important. And I read an article about how the show got on the air. It almost didn't, but it turns out Dan Levy knew a guy at the TV Guide network that was rebranding from the Channel Guide to actual original programming, and so they're yeah, we'll put your show on our channel, which is now Pop.
Pop.
But even with the famous dad, he still had to oh, and this is another funny tidbit, he still had to know someone. So I listened to an interview with Eugene Levy on Bullseye, I think, where he talked about his son approached him with this idea, and he's I don't know if I want to be in this if it's not good. And then oh, thankfully it's good, so I can be in it. So he was a proud dad, but also realistic about show business. Maybe my son wrote a dud script.
Luckily, no.
It's the funniest thing. It's very funny.
And Chris Elliott.
Yeah, Chris Elliott, who
just barely hangs in the background.
He knows this about himself, is that he's off-putting, and I think he's a talented actor, but his brand of creepiness, it's just I don't find funny. I mostly just find creepy, but here is just the right balance.
I think it's my favorite.
I mean, he's still
use of him as a character.
He's still very off-putting, I would say.
But deliberately,
as a character.
He was written that way, and becomes likable though. in his own
Yeah.
weird way.
Well, that and
Mostly because all the other he's the nemesis of Eugene Levy.
which
So,
that
yeah,
Eugene
works
Levy
perfect.
plays perfectly
Yeah.
off of that kind of over eager, oversharing. Like Eugene Levy, that's the perfect foil for
Yeah,
him.
they work great.
So maybe that's part of what I like about it.
Yeah.
I can stand about Chris Elliott. I mean, he's a great actor, Chris Elliott, but he's not usually for me.
Yeah.
I would say.
It brings out the best, Schitt's Creek, in everybody.
Yeah, in everyone. And in a funny, also fun fact, there's a Levy sister who's on the show, but does not play the sister of the family. She plays the waitress at
And
the cafe.
the woman that does play the sister does a spot-on impression of Dan Levy.
Yeah. Oh, she's so good too. It's such a good show.
Watch it.
Watch it. We're gonna go watch it. Okay. Well,
That's it.
noodles to you.
Yep.